everyone. It's just like people are still coming quickly here, so we're going to wait for a minute. Make room for everyone. Marla, you're having to click people in pretty steadily, huh? Um, Gosh, we have people who aren't always necessarily here. It's so great to see new folks and old friends. Well, it's like things are beginning to settle a little bit, so let's settle even more deeply in Zazen for a few minutes. Enjoy our sitting with each other. what a rare and treasured thing in the world that we live in now, to be able to sit together silently with all the presence that this beautiful group knows how to bring. And to allow ourselves to bring everything into our minds and into our hearts, into our bodies. Many of you know or have heard the word sesshin or sesshin. There's a Japanese word that describes usually a longer formal meditation retreat in a Zen temple or monastery. And one of the definitions or ways in English that word is sometimes translated as to collect the heart or mind. Sesshin, to collect the mind or collect the heart. And I've always taken that to mean it's a time where we draw in and draw close to everything, rather than trying to distance ourselves or move away from anything. To collect all the struggles and the difficulties and the wishing and striving and fighting and yearning and longing and fears aren't in the way. We collect all of that as the way. And the content of all those things can be distracting and powerful and engaging. But that's really not the point. The point is the collecting, not the content. The willingness to say yes and turn toward everything. And as we practice by our silent, upright sitting, our willingness and commitment to meet each thing without moving, something else is possible. Something else can be seen, realized, and expressed. It may not be understood, and that's why we call it the mystery. but it can be lived, like we're doing right now. And with our words and our shared voices, we remind ourselves of this reality when we chant, vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. It's a great joy to be with you today, as always, and to see some faces I haven't seen in a while, which is it's like an extra joy. Mhm. My being here less frequently than I used to is part of course, how life has changed. And I think in my note to you, I said the word I use, which is an unusual word maybe for this, is that well, my life is distilled. It's made smaller or focused. Uh, so many extra things falling away um, to to live with what's most essential. I don't have to create anything, any special practices to experience this. Although in a talk a few days ago, I mentioned practicing in Japan, we did something called Sodo, S-O-D-O, not Soto, Sodo practice, which means living in the Zendo and Buddha hall itself. And what that means is if you're on your tatami mat, which is 3 feet by 6 feet, and all of those tatami mats are next to each other, that's your entire home. You sit zazen there, you eat your meals there, you roll out your futon and sleep there, you roll it back up. It's the enactment of this kind of renunciation and falling away. But sometimes you don't have to um, go to the Zendo for that. The essence is distilled into everyday life if you pay attention, and especially if you have challenges which require it. And so as I've done that, I've also was just reflecting what I might say today. And I guess the primary thing is, and I've said this a couple of times recently in talks, I'm beginning to appreciate more and more how our Zen practice is Zazen and Precepts. That's really Zen practice. Zazen and precepts, and everything else issues from that. There are many things we do as practitioners and many things we do as Sangha, um, which support and encourage our willingness and ability to sit and our understanding of a wholesome and ethical way of life and caring for each other. So Zazen and precepts, if you want to remember what Zen practice is, there's many things that many of us do, which are quite wonderful and transformative, but Zen practice is Zazen and precepts. And you also know that in my teaching over the years, I've used a kind of a phrase because someone asked me, having been a psychotherapist for so long and also a Zen teacher, um, they said, "What do you actually do?" And um, I answered, you know this, many of you, what came out of my mouth is that I think my job is to help remove or soften barriers to love, no matter what I'm engaged in. So what I've been sitting with this week is Zazen and precepts, softening barriers to love. How do those relate? Am I am I a Zen teacher in this way? Well, Zazen, Zazen there's silence, like we just experienced some stillness, and that silence and stillness is an encouragement for non-manipulation. When you sit, a lot of things happen, right? It's not just silent in there. And you may not feel very still. And you may be in an environment that's not particularly silent or still. But the silence and stillness I'm talking about is non-manipulation. You don't do anything about it. You sit upright and steady as best you can in the midst of whatever's there. It's a small ceremony in which you're both celebrating and expressing your Buddha nature, your essential nature. It's not a meditation practice in which it's not a yogic practice to attempt to do anything. You're not trying to quiet your mind, relax your body, have certain insights, work on anything. It's the complete cessation of all manipulation whatsoever as you sit upright in stillness and silence. I mentioned in my talk the other day on Zazen that once in a retreat in the UK, and some of you were there. I see Catherine right on top there. And also, actually, in this retreat, I believe Aaron, who's sitting with me, was in this retreat because it was at Broadhouse. And I see John also, and a few other people. And one of our old friends, one of our Sangha members, who's now back in his birth home in New Zealand, Mark Gray, asked me, just point blank, what is Zazen? And all of the ideas that I had about how one could answer that question, and all the obvious things came, and I'd let them fall away to see where would I land. And the thing that I said when I opened my mouth was, I think Zazen is forgiving ourselves for being ourselves, which maybe is an odd way to say what I've just been talking about. It's also a backwards way of talking about self-acceptance, to forgive ourselves for being ourselves, to sit upright in a very dignified way, even though we may not feel anything but may not feel dignified at all. We may feel many, many things and experience many things, but nonetheless, we sit in silence and stillness and uprightness as a way of deeply suggesting that you accept this life and your body, and your circumstances. So these are some of the things I've reflected on in our Zazen. And then precepts. Precepts are this uprightness. And and an uprightness that is non-harming, a way of meeting yourself and the people around you that is not harming, that is in the pure precepts, it talks about doing what is good, not doing what's unwholesome or not so good, and to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings. So it's a way of understanding how life actually works. The precepts aren't commandments, as you know, all of you study this, but they are descriptions of how life works. And as we sit in non-manipulation, an upright way that's non-harming, we deepen our experience of how life works. Zazen is kind of like an opening, that welcoming that I talked about, calling in everything, as if our consciousness is concave and receiving in some ways. But it's also expressive. And the precepts are they're embracing, holding. There's a convex going out and expressing in the world. So there's this both sides. And, Joko would talk about becoming a larger and larger container for life over time. I, Sometimes I think I would rather use the word larger and larger channel. Because container is as if it lands here and all stays here, but life moves through us. We're becoming an immense channel for life by sitting upright in stillness and silence, and by turning toward the world in a way that's non-harming and non-manipulative, which are the precepts. So those are a lot of words to say Zen practices, Zazen, and precepts. And the other things that I've reflected on, if I'm distilling it down to Zazen and precepts, what about those fancy words that intrigue us and catch us in the Zen literature, like enlightenment, nirvana, awakening, things like that. So let me say a couple of things. So if literally the word enlightenment, since that's the one that's thrown around a lot, like enlightenment, like what's illuminated? What gets illuminated in practice? It's kind of like when someone asked Trungpa Rinpoche one time, if we're reincarnated, what gets reincarnated? He said, mainly your bad habits. It's what gets illuminated is our karma, our conditioning, our body, our mind, our life. Not some, it's not like the light shines through the clouds into heaven. No, we see our small mind more clearly. That's what big mind is to see our small mind and to know that that's what we will always live with. Enlightenment is the negotiation of delusion. No delusion, no enlightenment. It's like, no mud, no lotus. But literally, enlightenment is the negotiation of delusion. How are you going to relate to a deluded human being, which you are and which you will always be? But the way you relate to delusion is what gets lit up, what gets revealed, not as punishment. Remember, this is about forgiveness. This is about profound acceptance. Nirvana, not being caught in reactivity. It's not a heavenly state. In fact, I appreciate the way Stephen Batchelor talks about that we have nirvanic moments. That's pretty good. A moment in which you're not caught in conditioning and you're not, uh, bound up in reactivity. There's like a little spaciousness. It's not totalizing. It's not once and for all. It's not the cessation or extinguishing of every bit of delusion you have. That's not going to happen. But you can have moments when you're free and not caught in those things. So we call it freedom, we call it liberation. And what you're free from and what you're liberated from is the caughtness. But you're still you, all of you. and you always will be. You're not going to be given by your practice, by Zen practice, you're not going to be given a bunch of new and better experiences. You're not going to be carried over to the other shore in the way that is a fantasy. But what you will have is a new and more spacious relationship with all experience. It's not like you go from having the life you have, which probably is not so great, you think, or missing something, to this really wonderful life. Now that's nirvana. No, nirvana is, and the enlightenment is about not having the better experiences. You're going to have the same old experiences to the end. I'm very sorry to tell you, but how you relate to them and the impact they have on you is going to be very different. I can't tell you how many senior teachers I've talked to, and they basically say some version of, enlightenment's not that hard. You'll have something that you'll be really disappointed. And what's disappointed is the curative fantasy is what gets disappointed. And as those fall away, that's more distillation. You can wake up more and more to actually what's true. So awakening is the other word that I wanted to reflect on you. Enlightenment, nirvana, awakening. And you know that I've keyed off of some of the wonderful writings and teachings of Joan Sutherland um, about awakening being consisting of both enlightenment and endarkenment. And so just briefly, I'm going to read a few sentences from Joan Sutherland. And the reason I'm going to do that, not only is it useful, but she's such a good writer, I can't stop myself because it's so beautiful. And this is from some of her commentary on the Vimalakirti Sutra, but I'm not going to reference that particularly. But listen to her words. She says, in broad strokes, enlightenment is about the brilliant illumination that lifts us out of the suffering world and is the focus of the classical Buddhist literature. Endarkenment is about the radiance of the depth that lets us find home in the world. Endarkenment is the heart that breaks open to life, rests comfortably on the unfathomable mystery of existence, and is easy with uncertainty, complexity, and what courses underground. Enlightenment and endarkenment are both essential to awakening. That's the key sentence. Enlightenment and endarkenment are both essential to awakening, because including the dark makes awakening whole. And just one more comment. She says, if you don't dive into the vast ocean of existence, see, that's the pulling together of everything, allowing ourselves to meet everything. If you don't dive into the vast ocean of existence, you'll never find the precious jewel of awakening. And the heavenly realms, see, that's the one we want, right? In the heavenly realms, everything is perfect and awakening isn't possible because nothing ever changes. See, this is why I said delusion. Awakening is the negotiation of delusion. You go to the heavenly realms, there's no awakening. It's nothing. It's in this world, she says, where our ankles go out from under us. I love that. Our hearts get broken and we weep tears that are solvent for whatever is stuck within us. That awakening can happen. Something can happen in the dark that can't in the light or the heavenly realms. Something about, and listen to these words when you think about Zazen, something about simplicity and stillness, vastness and depth. In the velvet dark, there is so much less we're compelled to know and do. So much more space for listening. See the non-manipulation? We bless the marvelous poverty of human life by doing what we can only do here. Feeling our way along the walls that give texture and shape to the deep nights of our lives, this is what endarkenment means. She says, welcome to your own heart. So it's kind of beautiful poetic words, which I enjoy, but I wanted you to really get a feel for how these are pointing to the things that I'm emphasizing in Zazen and Precepts. So now maybe you begin to hear the reason I vow to offer practices to help soften barriers to love when she ends with welcome to your own heart. This is not a psychological release for deeper emotional connection. That's not the kind of love I'm talking about. That might happen, but that's not Zen practice. And Zen practice is not giving you better coping strategies so that you can deal better. And the Sangha is not a support group so that you can be comforted so that you don't have to look at what's going on. All those things happen and they're lovely. I like them, but they're not the point of practice. Some of those things allow us to do the hard work of practice. Zazen is to plumb the mystery in silence and stillness and simplicity as we participate in this ceremony of celebrating and expressing our awakened nature together and practice being upright no matter how you feel. And it isn't about repression. It's about collecting it all in that upright stillness. That's Zazen. Precepts. Continue to live your way deeper and deeper into a wholesome life. Meet the ways that are not wholesome, not to criticize yourself or to try to purify yourself on the other hand, but to illuminate it all, to wake up to it all, to look at it all, to turn toward everything belongs. And if your vow is to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings, like the pure precept says, then you're going to have to keep turning toward your life to remain awake to how you treat people in the world and how you treat yourself in the world. Essentially, you don't awaken. Awakening wakes up through you. You don't wake up. It's not personal. Awakening wakes up. But a human life is required for it. So at bottom, you ask, how do I live? Well, the answer to that question so far is the way you're living your life. Because you haven't really maybe asked it in that way. How do I live? But your life is the answer. That's what you're doing. And real practice, as I've said before, does not answer the questions about how you're supposed to live your life. It questions your answers. Practice is the questioning, the answers, the answer meaning the life that you're living. Practice isn't the answer, it's the challenge. It's the looking at the manifestation of your answer all the time. But some guideposts like meet everything inside and outside with curiosity and patience and cultivate an attitude of intimacy and care for everything and everyone. You know, you can hear the paramitas in there. You can hear the precepts in there. And even in the very unique way that our worldwide family of Sangha, this Mahasangha, has named itself. You know, the foundation is Appamada, clear, mindful care. That's the elephant's footprint that the Buddha said. Every other teaching can fall inside that. And so what do we do to understand that? Well, first you open the door, Madison, the open door Sangha, you open the door to everything and everyone so that it can be included. And in the process, we can, there in the Twin Seas, awaken together. We understand that awakening is something that happens between and among, not just in. It isn't a personal enterprise. And all of this As amazing as it sounds, there's really nothing special there in Sheffield. But of course, nothing's missing because we've included everything. There is nothing extra. It's the whole world. Nothing needs to be added. All the song is in the UK. And of course, it's just this, our life, distilled. So Zazen, precepts, removing barriers because awakening is our birthright. So you don't have to create it, but you can let barriers fall away so that we can support each other for awakening to move through us more fully. So you have some words that maybe encourage that channel to open even further and bring them forward. I'd love to hear from you. I'm sure other people would too. Susan.
Uh, Flint, something that was occurring to me while you were talking is the mystery to me of sitting together, sitting with other people. And I'm aware in my own life that I had long wanted to have a meditation practice, and I had a cushion at home, and I never did it. And then when I, or occasionally I would do it, but and then when I started coming to Appamada, I came every day, and I was sitting in silence for quite a while with people I didn't really know, and I wasn't talking to them because we don't speak and all of that. And yet it was such a draw. And I wondered if you would just reflect a little bit. You've sort of been alluding to it about what feels to me the mystery of sitting in community or with each other, with other
Yeah,
people, even though you're not talking to them and you may not know their
doing a good
name.
job. Yeah, you talked about uh, having a longing for something. And if I understood you right, you assumed that a meditative type practice would meet that longing, but you didn't do it. But it sounds like you could say, we do it. You don't, you don't do it, but we do it. And so somehow the longing was met in the sitting together, and that seems like a mystery because we're so accustomed to being attached to the contents of our awareness and the contents of our relationality of what's happening. And Zazen is the invitation to stop most of that interaction so that we're not caught in content so much. This is a chance for nirvana to be not caught in conditioning. But we do relate, don't we? When someone comes and sits next to you, there's a silent acknowledgement. It's formal, it's very small. We do turn a certain way, we do certain things together so that we acknowledge presence. That's different than acknowledging personality or content. We acknowledge presence because that's the entry to the mystery. If we get into content and sharing stories, that's fun at happy hour, it's great. But that doesn't get us into the mystery. That gets us into everydayness where we can say, yeah, that's great or that's bad, or. But when we settle into the silence and stillness with others and show our deep respect for them by our stillness and silence as they show theirs to us, that's a rare thing in the world, like I mentioned in the very beginning. And so there is a richness to that kind of presence that we create together, which is a little different than the presence that we have alone. That it's not better or worse, but there's something that can, I think, hold us because we're enacting that larger channel. And that enactment somehow we feel, but we can't figure it out. That's why it seems like the mystery. But you can, and it's like everything in practice, you can realize the inconceivable. It's embodied, inconceivable, but you can't make words for it sometimes or understand it, but you can realize it. And so that's why we bow. It's like, yeah. And thanks for asking that. It's a really good question. If you don't know how to raise your hand, I bet Marla can find you, Bronwyn.
Oh, you're calling on me, Annie. Okay,
There you are.
let me take my earbuds out. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Um, just
You hear
MacBook
me all right?
speakers. Oh, sorry to be taking up so much time with this.
Oh, yeah. This is the
Trying
stuff
to
that
get my
requires
earbuds out
negotiation.
and just stick them in and see if I can do this.
That better?
Yeah.
Good.
Um, what I was going, I'm having trouble with the speaker because it's coming in through my ears and I don't know how to, oh dear.
If I speak like this, can you hear me?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with hearing.
Can you hear me through your
Um,
computer?
I'm not
Maybe.
going to be able to hear you, so I'm just going to go ahead.
Okay.
Um, now I'm getting very sad because I can only hear myself and I can't hear you. So I'm going to see if I can make this work or not. Um, I am getting kind of teary right now. Um, I joined a piano class
Mhm.
and the teacher introduces themselves and then you introduce yourself.
Mhm.
And you'd introduce yourself by sending a video.
Mhm.
And I put the video together and then I watched myself. And the interesting thing was, I'm going to use a word that isn't quite correct. I was horrified.
Mhm. I understand that. Other people
Um,
are shaking their heads.
to cry again. I thought I was fairly clear. And from not looking at myself in a video, I feel just fine. By not looking at, and I don't look at myself in the mirror very often. I just
Mhm.
kind of go like this with my hair and walk into my day.
Can you see yourself now?
I can see myself now, but I'm looking at you.
Ah.
I'm not looking at myself.
Mhm.
And I found it quite fascinating that I was, and I'm going to use this word again, horrified. That's a little strong. It's not exactly what I mean. But I'm just wondering if you can. I was so self-critical because I was also singing. I was showing how I sing.
Mhm.
I was listening to myself sing. And I've sung for a long time,
Yeah.
but I haven't necessarily seen myself sing and listened to myself sing. Can you speak to that self criticism that isn't there when we just are,
Mhm.
but in reflection, I'm confused by that, how I can be so critical of myself.
Well, first, everyone who has ever experienced this, raise your hand. So most everybody's raising their hand. So it's not uncommon. Um, because we don't watch ourselves, we're watching other people and we don't even know how we sound. One of the most difficult things about being a teacher in the Zoom age is having to listen to yourself and watch yourself all the time. And so I've grown more accustomed to it. But the person I believe the construct I have that I hold of who I am and what I look like and what I sound like is not what I see or hear. Even when I have a lot of data and watch a lot, I feel myself to be different. I'm always, younger and more attractive, and whatever the things are that we all have that we hope for. And the gap between who we see ourselves to be and who we think we are is the suffering. And you can feel that. We're kind of horrified by the gap sometimes. Horrified is not a bad word to use, you know. We're shocked. It's like, how can that
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
You know? Um, and other people give us feedback or look at us lovingly and accepting and joyful, and they give us, all kind of great stuff. So all in all, I think it's really useful to, let me stop for a minute. There's an old koan that says, show me your face before your parents were born. Now, of course, it's one of those weird invitations to go beyond form into the emptiness, But there's another way I think about it. It's practical. If I sit, and you and I have done this, if we just sit together quietly and just look at each other, something happens. I know you're looking at me, and I'm looking at you, and various things fall away over the time. But after a while, I realize I am. It's not this way. I can see myself in your face. And I don't mean some weird ideas that I see this face, there. We we find ourselves reflected in others. A mirror is just a weird, reflection of our visage. And yeah, you get like, what happened to my hair and why do I have wrinkles and all that. But there's something deeper if we'll let ourselves be reflected in what we see and hear in others. That other self-judgment stuff is probably going to come up and is going to be your job to forgive yourself for being yourself. That's my point. Like, this is who I am.
I don't get this is who I am. What I get is this is who I am deep inside. And I look at you and I feel the oneness. I feel the oneness with the world, with the plants. And I feel that is who I am.
Yes, it is
That
true.
is the deepest, that's what I relate to.
That's
I
right.
don't relate to the person in the screen. And that's what's horrifying. And
Well,
so it's that it's that what
it's horrifying only because you have judgments. If you didn't have judgments or ideas, there would be no comparison. We wouldn't be comparing it to anything. You'd just say, oh, look at that. Look at that woman. If you saw that woman, it's weird when you walk down the street and you catch your reflection in the glass, of a thing, because you don't know it's you and you think it's this old woman or whatever.
that's right.
Right. It's like, oh my God, who is that? And then you realize, oh, that's me. It's just something we have to work with, is we have very poor self-perception, very poor. And so we have to, take our time to accept and realize that, of course, the oneness, the love, all that stuff that you and I can do and you can do with the world and with your dog and is all great. But guess what? Everybody else is seeing.
Is that who I am? Or is this who I am? Is that picture on the
Yes,
screen of the person struggling to
yes.
sing and hitting the wrong note? Is
All of
that who
it's
I am?
you. Yes, it's like the relative and the absolute. It's like, yes, the big oneness thing is you, and this small wrinkly form is you. Yes, all of it is you. But you can't say this is me and that's not. That's a problem. Or this is me and that's not. They are both you. It's wave and particle, it's relative and absolute, it's the sublime and the mundane all at the same time. And sometimes we get caught by one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're in good company. Absolutely. Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
Cass. Did that make sense?
Oh God. Yeah. And adore Bronwyn and have a recording of her singing that I listen to that
Oh yeah,
is profoundly moving in me.
me too. Chance, you know.
Chance, yes. Oh my. Uh
Hey, oh my.
hey, oh my, yeah. And working on exactly what she's bringing up, big part of what I do, who I call myself, whatever. So when you were talking about like living in the Zendo on the mat, and in the 3 foot by 6 foot space. Okay. I want that and in the world.
You do have that in the world if you begin to notice it. We have so many ways that we trick ourselves into thinking we're quite distant and separate.
Oh yeah, which is what Bronwyn is bringing up.
Right, right. And actually, we're quite close. You know, when you sleep in that way, it's irritating because you know people snore and you put your heads toward the altar. Everybody has their heads in the same way, you know. And some people don't sleep or you know, whatever. So it's kind of interesting, and so many things happen because you're so darn close. I can't believe that Mark Gray just entered the waiting room. But anyway, sorry. And different things happen. I can remember in the most solemn ceremony when Blanche was abbess, whatever, and she was in full everything, doing her bows in the service, and it was time for her to come up to the ton, the raise, so she could bow to her seat. She bowed away. She hoisted herself up onto the thing and farted really, really loud in a very quiet Zendo. And you know, it's just really human
Right,
in the midst of what looks like the refined beauty.
right. And it's that acceptance part that you're bringing up.
Right. Right. The story I've told about pouring hot water on Sojun Weissman in Huitsu, you know, and he leans over and he says, it's only water, you know, it's like that deep acceptance where you're making this horrible, shameful mistake, you know. But
And that
you
idea,
continue, you just continue with dignity.
because the only thing I can guarantee is a continuous mistake.
That's right. One continuous mistake. And you continue with as much dignity as you can.
Ugh,
Because you're going into all of your shame and reactivity, that's not the gift you want to give everybody.
not even myself.
No, certainly not that, but we get that. But it's actually isn't living for the benefit of others.
Others. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean, once again, being repressed and not having, you know, you have your feelings,
Right.
but that's not what you want to lead with. You know, remember, you're a Buddha farting, you're a Buddha spilling things, you're the Buddha doing the bell at the wrong time.
Yeah. And all the other things that.
All the other things, that's what you collect. Mhm. Oh, and I see that we're just right at the end. Um, and also, I'll say ahead of time, congratulations, Cassie, entering as head student with the Just This Consortium of Sanghas in the UK on this weekend. It's an auspicious moment. Be lovely. So let's let's chant the 4 practice principles, um, and see them as an expression of everything that we've spoken about, okay? And I'm going to, excuse me, I have to remember if I have this sound proper. There we go. Here we go. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Thanks everyone for coming, and for being here and expressing themselves so fully, because it allows me to practice. But thank you for offering this opportunity for my practice. And hi, Mark.
And please remember that Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity, and your support makes a huge difference. There is a link for contributions on the website and at the link that I'm putting into the chat below. And if any of you would like to continue and stay on for an extra half an hour with some of us on our virtual porch, we will get together and reflect and share and connect with each other. So just stay where you are as everyone else leaves.
And you might see how all of your love and energy is coming into Paula Bacchus right now from the side, you know. How beautiful that is. Bye-bye.